is the XR Motion Podcast with your hosts, Michael Steinberg and Andrew Ho.
Welcome to the XR Motion Podcast, where we go over everything AR, VR, 3D, motion graphics, metaverse, whatever that is. You name it, we go over it. Today we have a very special episode, which we'll go over that and why in a minute. But before we do that, we have the most amazing co-host in the world, Andrew. How's it going, bud?
It's going well. I just finished watching your Nomad Sculpt video that you just put on YouTube, and I'm excited to download that and kind of jump in because there's some very cool things happening in that program. So appreciate that. Thank you for that Monday knowledge, Mikey.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's a short one, but it's just Nomad Sculpt is too good of a program not to share. It's just one of those things that has gone under the radar too long. And anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed it. But we have a very special episode today. Today, number one, it is our first time being live. How cool. We're on YouTube.
I did not dress for this. I did not. I'm not a natural beauty, so it's very exciting. We've been trying to do this for what? I feel like every episode we've recorded in the last 3 or 4 episodes, we just kind of end up saying, is this the one we tried on? And we don't. So
yeah, it's exciting. It's a work in progress. I think we're going to keep getting this whole process better and better and better. But you know what? Baby steps. And today for our first guest, we have somebody who's actually a pro at that. This is WoodyDevs. He is an amazing Unreal artist. We met, actually, funny enough, another guest back-to-back at Camp MoGraph. We have a funny story about that, which we'll get into. How we met was, and believe it or not, because I'm just walking through the woods, and I'm like, who is this plastic creature that is just walking around with a perfect mustache? It's unbelievable. He was rendered in Redshift and Unreal. Anyway, so
actually, if you will, it's all microplastics. They keep warning you about that. Don't overdo it.
No, don't overdo it, or this is the end result.
This is what happens.
Yeah, he's definitely by far one of the most, I want to say, uniquely talented in Unreal Engine users I've ever met, because this stuff he's been doing with his live streams, he has users being able to incorporate modifications in VR by typing into Twitch, and it'll affect his gameplay. It's just wild. We're going to dive very into
Internet
it.
of Things on steroids, or Internet of Things, but cool, not just I can turn my thermostat on and off. It's like I can submit something in Slack and it's going to happen on Unreal, or Discord, and it'll happen on Unreal. So
yeah, it is wild. Well, anyway, guys, we have WoodyDevs. How's it going, bud?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Amazing.
Why don't we just kind of start? I would love to hear, I'm familiar with your work and your project and the kind of stuff you're doing, but for those of you who maybe are just being introduced, why don't you give us your, elevator pitch on what you're doing and why you're doing it and what you like about what you're doing?
Yeah. So my name's Woody. I run an edutainment brand called WoodyDevs. We do a good mixture of things. I sort of exist in the center of a couple of different Venn diagrams. I sit comfortably in the world of VTubers, of people who use digital avatars to do streaming, as well as the YouTube developer scene of people who make weird little games and put them online, and also the world of people who are trying to advance the scene of what's possible to do in Unreal Engine. So it's kind of those three things. I'm sort of right in the middle there, and I'm just trying to do some wild stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I will not to interrupt, but I feel like wild stuff is I actually said to myself audibly under my breath when I first saw your YouTube channel. I was like, wild stuff. I mean, this is there. It really is. I mean, it is such a cool. I love. I grew up playing video games, so I kind of see there's this this injection of like interaction and gaming and, being able to kind of experience something with other people in real time, but then layering on top of it, all this amazing tech that you're using within Unreal. Unreal is already such an exciting thing to be talking about right now in our industry. How long have you been using Unreal, and how long have you been modding it to kind of fit your needs in the way that you are with the WoodyDevs project?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it goes way, way back. So when I was a little kid, I want to attribute it to like not having a lot of entertainment options, but like I've kind of always been like rolling my own of whatever I want to do. So like as a little kid, like, like we had video games for sure. I like definitely missed some console eras for certain, but we didn't have a whole lot of TV channels. I didn't like live in the woods or anything like that, but like I grew up in like rural America, and I feel like when there was like fun to be had, like half the time I was like, I want to make this myself. And that also included video game stuff. So like when I was a little kid, I was like playing around in like some no code engines and like building little EXEs out and like running them around on flash drives and like handing them off to my friends in the library when they like blocked Newgrounds and Miniclip and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Remember the Flash era.
Yeah,
I was like,
Flash gaming era was like that, maybe peak gaming. We'll never know, but I definitely would go to the library with my friends and play Flash.
Do you guys allow for like hot takes on your show? Like,
sure. Yeah.
I drop one. I think
absolutely.
I think most of our societal pitfalls have come from the exodus of Flash from modern platforms. I think you can trace everything back, like all of the like terrible.
Once you started getting the internet notifications, it's like Flash is going to be phased out, and you need to upgrade. Like here's whatever you need to be running now. That was the plight. That's when things started getting bad.
No, I mean like I can trace like an entire history of like everything that's awful about right now, I can trace it back to Flash. You know what I mean?
That's a hot take.
So we have like, like you have like, ridiculous, like far right internet, terrible people who are, just ruining things. It's like, well, that comes from social media. It's like, how did social media get so big? It's like, okay, well, because we started spending more time on our phones and stuff with apps and such like. If we had just stuck with Flash, if we had just like hung out and like the perfect, like the perfect content delivery system, like we would have just been contentedly still playing RuneScape.
If Flash had been the technological peak of
I mean, honestly, what more do you need besides stick figure action shorts, right? I mean, that's...
Well, I mean, and also it's crazy too, because I feel like Adobe Flash was... as big as After Effects at one point. It was like the two went hand in hand because it was people were doing like cell stuff in Flash, but
yeah,
long gone are the days.
Did you guys watch Homestar Runner?
Oh yeah. Homestar Runner was absolutely.
So
strong bad emails all day, every day.
Strong bad emails forever.
I feel like maybe I've seen every one. I don't know.
For those of your audience who don't know, Homestar Runner was a short film Flash site that ran in like the early 2000s for like a good like 8 or 10 years or something.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. It was like all original characters that didn't seem to have any sort of like origin or reference point to reality. It was extremely like sort of postmodern, I guess, in some ways.
Like it was for me the same reason I'm obsessed with like the show Adventure Time is the same reason.
Yes.
The same reason I'm obsessed. It's like it's weird. There are times that it was probably like I wouldn't be surprised if my mom at the time had saw me watching some of Homestar Runner. She would have been like, "This is much too dark for someone your age." Like there were like kind of these themes bundled into everything. It was still kind of like it was kids humor in a lot of ways, but going back and looking again, I'm like, oh my gosh, was I learning valuable life lessons from Homestar Runner?
Yeah. So let me show you guys some stuff here. The in terms of like what I can do with Unreal Engine stuff. So like
oh my gosh, are we getting a live demo?
Yeah.
Two cameras. Like the fact that you can just cut between cameras,
that's
even.
Wild.
I mean, I can do a little bit more than that too. So I have my computer here. The computer. It's like you can see I have like my this little bracket on the side that makes it 16:9. I've been meaning to like kind of make the model look a little bit better. At one point I was like, oh, I need this to be 16:9. So then I just like hunked on this little metal brace on the side. But like it's very much in that Homestar vein of like, I need my old school computer
Yeah,
that
my
I'm going to type my
CRT
email
monitor.
with my boxing gloves on, So
Now,
Oh.
I just want to say really
Yeah.
quick for anybody who's listening to this on the podcast, WoodyDevs right now is being completely rendered in Unreal Engine and looks amazing. And with just a click of the button, I guess he just had, and we're talking to him, and he has arm controls complete. He has complete facial controls
motion
on
tracking.
his avatar. This is amazing. And then with the click of a button, he literally just had the camera zoom out, go 100% behind him, and look at his computer screen, his virtual computer screen. It's kind of wild.
Oh
It's
man,
definitely
I feel
wild.
like I
It
shouldn't
is-
do any
it's
visual
crazy.
gags anymore because you're gonna have to explain all of it to people who like are catching this later. The
oh no! The tech demo.
The metaverse went too far. The metaverse is crashing.
I'm still live. We're still good.
no.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Woody, you're cutting in and out, and I think we're getting a network connection thing.
Hold on.
It's apparently your internet, according to Riverside. I mean, again, people listening and not watching, WoodyDevs is doing such advanced, complex, amazing real-time rendering that the internet, as in its current state, cannot handle it.
Yeah.
The internet has been broken on this episode of XR Motion.
Yeah.
That is. I mean, that's.
It's definitely cool though. I definitely feel it's the future. I can already see that, this could be something where, because it's an Unreal, it would be something where, if me and you were both having avatars exactly the same way, where somebody could join in VR and see 3 virtual people having a full-on conversation,
Well, and that's one thing I'm curious about with I mean, the kind of tech that Woody's using, but then also just in general the sort of orientation of where everything's been heading. Like cloud computing has to be on the verge of just, I mean, it's already huge, but it has to be on the verge of absolutely exploding, because to be able to now I feel like the new barrier to entry is just going to be, think about how hard it was to get like a 30 series NVIDIA card, when they dropped. Like, the barrier to entry is going to be, do you even stable diffusion? Like I have a 3080, which I guess technically is, not the nicest card anymore, but like it's a 3080. It was a nightmare to get, it's definitely a nice card. I can do a lot of amazing stuff with it, but even stable diffusion, like it will cap out. Like if I try to push stable diffusion too much, in some of the plugins that I'm running, if I'm doing it in Blender, it, immediately craps out. So it's interesting to see when we get Woody back. One of the things I did want to ask him is like, one, the impetus for building something like this, and 2, how much time did it take to get it to be so efficient in real time? Because that's got to be
exhausting. I mean, it's just it's wild. I mean, real time rendering, it's just such a new feat. I mean, and we had Will on last week, and it's definitely just, I feel like it's every month just seeing more and more cool cases on where real-time render engine it's just becoming so prevalent in our lives, and it's just,
think about the fact that 10 years ago, if you wanted to do motion tracking in a project, I mean, pretty much you just had to have a budget of $50,000 at least, of just, getting someone else to come in who owned the gear to do, to translate the motion capture data into something usable for whatever whatever your pipeline is. And so now it's crazy, because I mean, even if you think about, what were the Apple emojis, the live tracking stuff. Snapchat filters, Instagram filters. I mean, all this stuff relies on real-time tracking. And it's just, especially with the advent of all this, the AI and neural networks and stuff, some of the live motion tracking is getting scary good.
Yeah, it's kind of like, that's such a good point. I mean, it's funny with the live tracking, because it is kind of real-time rendering, right? I mean, and the reasons for it are becoming everyday usage, just like the emojis. You can real-time track your face. It's funny to think just how 5 years ago, I mean, there was essentially no good looking real time graphics. And now, where we're at is phenomenal. Now, just imagine another 5 years,
Ugh.
right? I mean, it's going to be
Which is,
probably.
and it's kind of a thing I feel like most of the people that we talk to, and a lot of the stuff that I listen to around just where we're at with everything, the biggest mistake you could be making right now is just not trying. I know it is not always accessible to have the time and the resources to do, some self-learning and some people need structured learning, but like picking up a course or just staying on top of like any of these trends around sort of all the AI thing is now sort of just turning into these new tools that are just, they're new things that you need to learn. You might not even realize you're using AI because it's just leveraging that kind of technology. But I think, taking the time to kind of educate yourself on where things are heading right now, because I mean, in 5 years, it's going to be, I every week now, I'm just like, I have to learn Unreal. I need to learn Unreal yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
especially because I'm just starting to see people rendering stuff out of it that I'm like, this looks as good as every other render engine. Like,
yeah. And I feel, kind of like Blender, where you're seeing people make their own plugins for it and their own, it's like, I feel like with Cinema 4D, there's not many plugins, right? You don't feel like there's a lot of plugins with these kind of
Unreal's a little more open, not open source, but community driven in that sense.
100% community driven. Yeah.
And people sharing, like, again, I don't use Unreal, but I've kind of watched things here and there. Blueprints, right? So it's like,
yeah,
you can share like functionality that you can like give to somebody else and they can implement themselves. Or all right, he's back.
We've got Woody back.
Sorry about that, guys.
All good. It's all good. You really broke the matrix there. I loved it.
Yeah, sorry about that. You actually just witnessed my entire startup process for like my internet came on like I don't know. I promise you, it's not because of the tech. I'm like constantly dueling with my ISP. It's like
yeah. No, I get that. I had to, like, when I wanted to use my own modem, I had to like call my ISP, have them register the modem, have them whitelist. It's like a nightmare. I get it. And ever since I've done that, I have pretty, knock on wood, but I pretty much try to reboot my router like every night just because it's the only thing that mitigates them just like throttling my internet.
And they'll mess with you if you got a custom modem too. Like I bought my own modem. It's like I switched back because they were like, they would not help me with it. They were like,
right,
hey, like, it's not our equipment. We don't really know what's wrong. It's like you
know what's wrong. Don't lie. Well, I'm glad that you're back. You didn't miss much. We just said that your tech was so good that it broke the internet, but now we know it's actually just that ISPs are so bad that the internet is broken. So, but I think you were about to kind of talk us through some of just what you're running right now live to accomplish what we're seeing.
Yeah. So, I was saying, as a kid, like I always, I used to program games. I worked as a filmmaker for a really long time. During COVID, I started messing around with some of the stuff. I think with Unreal Engine. That's the long and short of it. And like there are a lot of really inspiring people in this space. Like I'm not the first person to do a lot of this stuff. Like I could name some names. Like if anyone's familiar with Code Miko, like obviously like a huge inspiration for some of the stuff I'm doing here with the Twitch scene. But it's been a really fun experiment, partially because like everything you're seeing is like stuff I've coded myself. Like I made my avatar, like all of the, the Unreal side of things was all written in Blueprint code, which is like their native visual scripting language. I use a lot of that in the stuff that I do. So it's kind of like all a big moving, whirling thing. But I've just sort of like tacked on more over time, and it's just been kind of like my place where I issue content from. Like I don't really love being on camera. Like I have actually been on camera a little bit before in some of the content that I make, and it's like if you look closely at it, it's like always like my microphone is slipping, and like I didn't like brush my hair, and like like it's like sticking out sideways and funny and stuff, and it's like it's not my favorite thing. But being the virtual guy, it's like, I don't know, it's like it's like kind of like piloting a mech. And you're like, you feel a little bit invincible. You're like, hey, yeah, you know what I mean? Like if I got to step on an Ewok village to get where I'm going,
I'll do it. No, I mean,
no, I would never.
Yeah, obviously would not. I mean, who would? But no, that's such a good perspective though, because yeah, I mean, it's you obviously have such a wide breadth of knowledge that I think for a lot of people, I mean, at least at XR Motion, our community, so many people are learning Unreal and looking for good resources and honestly, in a lot of cases, just trying to understand the power of Unreal, right? Like what makes Unreal different from Cinema or Blender, or, any of the, like what is the point of it? And, you start the conversation with like, oh, well, it's a lot, it can be a live engine, so it can run in real time. And that opens up the conversation about, okay, so why would I want to do that? For a lot of times it's like, oh, well, it makes render times, it reduces render time. So when you're finished a project, but then you go and look at, again, the kind of stuff you're doing where it's like, this is an integration of so many different moving parts. But at the end of the day, you're also meeting people at a lot of different, like, people are seeing the content, the fact that they can interact with you live. I mean, that is bridging a lot of gaps. Twitch exists out, independent of YouTube because there's such a demand for live interaction and live content. So it's just interesting to see you kind of building these bridges between all these things that have been going on.
Yeah. It's I feel like not a lot of people have like a great conception around it. Like there's a lot of interest in Unreal Engine right now, and some of it's sort of misplaced. Like I've seen some other people like kind of, I don't want to say like get it wrong or something like that, because I'm no like arbiter of like what's what when it comes to the 3D world. But I've used a number of other pieces of software. Like I was a heavy After Effects user for a really long time. And I cut my 3D chops learning Blender like 4 or 5 years ago. And I definitely did some like traditional rendering projects. And it's like, it's a whole different bag in here. Like there are some of the same tools in Unreal Engine to do a lot of that stuff, because I know a lot of the people in your audience are specifically 3D artists. But you also have developers too. This whole thing about working in Unreal Engine, and people, I think for the most part people know this, but it's a game engine. So it works like a game engine works until it's time to do other stuff, and then it works how how those tools work within a game engine, basically.
Right.
So like there's a sequencer you can use to do timelines, right? For like nonlinear editing with timelines, keyframing, stuff like that. And it kind of all lives there. But then there's like some supplementary tools that you need to have a good handle on to be able to like work well, and some of that stuff just like works out of the box in Maya or Blender or something like that, and it's like a little bit more
right. It's like the repurposing of a game engine for other things can feel different than like what's crazy is I also have a background in Blender, and obviously Blender has Eevee now, which is their sort of raster based engine, not really quite real time, but like way faster than Cycles. And apparently there's a rewrite of that engine coming out, Eevee Next, which might change some things. But the point being is they had Blender had a game engine that you could write functionality into way back, like 2.6 or and then that got phased out, and then shortly thereafter Eevee came out. But there was a game engine that you could bind controls, and you could make a little platformer game where you go around and you shoot a little ball and it like knocks over some cubes. But yeah, it's for me, that is like even opening Unreal, it doesn't really look like, I can tell there's just a base level of knowledge you need to have that is separate from working in maybe some of these other programs.
Yeah. So like when I first got into it, it was pretty opaque. Like there's a long second where I was like, huh, what? And I pushed myself really hard to make something that like make a video in it, like pushed really hard. And it took me a while. It took me like a month to make the first video. But like as time went on, like I could just kind of see how I could use code to do more and more of it, which was good, because then I could start like figuring out the tools. And I was like, okay, great. It's like I can start plugging all this stuff in. And the thing is, like using their code system is like honestly really easy. Like if you get into Blueprint, the visual scripting stuff, it's like you just kind of like type in what you're looking for, and then it kind of hands it to you, like a lot of it. And there's a lot of things you can program without really needing to dig into, a lot of tutorials or the language and stuff. Like it can be kind of feast or famine sometimes, but for the most part, like I feel like I'm able to dig into it. And that's
So
like,
really quick though, with
yeah,
blueprints, I mean, I feel like blueprints is always a little bit of a mysterious word,
yeah.
that people hear get thrown around. What would be some of the main blueprints or the main use cases of using blueprints?
Sure.
As it, it's replacing code. Is it kind of something that can help open like a door if it needs to? Is it something where you add physics onto something, or?
So, okay, so broad strokes here, 30,000 foot view. Blueprint is a
Yeah.
visual scripting language. Unreal actually has two different languages you can write in. You can write in C++ or you can write in Blueprint. And kind of the idea behind Blueprint, at least what I've heard from Epic, is like Blueprint's designed for game designers who want to like make stuff really fast. It's not designed to be like the workhorse, most possibly efficient system that you would run a game on. Like typically in the AAA world, people are like designing things in Blueprint to be able to like figure out quickly if something's cool or not, and then they're letting the engineers who are a little bit more code specific get in there and like do all the optimizations afterwards. There's ways you can nativize Blueprint into C++, or you can just kind of, I don't know, like make your prototypes and go back in and start from scratch. And if you have a really big team, it works well like that. But if you're someone like me who's like, hey, there's just one of me, Blueprint gets the job done pretty well. I mean, people have made whole games in it. If I'm not mistaken, Deep Rock Galactic is written in Unreal Blueprint in Unreal Engine 4. And that's like, I don't know if you guys play that game. That's a pretty sick game. Like, it's a ton of fun. I have a lot of friends that play that game. And when I found out, I was like, all right, yeah. Because, there's endless debates in the dev community. It's like, oh, Blueprint versus C++. Like, oh, C++ is hard to use. Oh, Blueprint's so slow. Like, Unity versus Unreal Engine. Like, oh, the Unity is, like, it's so much more friendly. Unreal, the graphics are so much better. And it's like, it's not interesting. Like, I feel like I can tell whether or not someone is invested in either technology by hearing how much they compare it with the other.
Right. Yeah, and just also some of those conversations do sort of get in the way of like, like tech debt can be a thing. There can be a point in your career where you realize, like, I talked to a lot of people at the meetup that, even just even having outdated hardware becomes an issue for them, where it's like, I'm trying to push my skills as a 3D artist. And like the biggest barrier is that, I can't see anything in my viewport in real time, and it takes forever to render stuff. So it makes it, in a lot of ways, the resources are limiting.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
There's also the other side of that, where as you mature as an artist, or as you get more specific in your workflow, you sort of cut out the fat and you realize you might not need as much stuff, and then suddenly the question is, you have these conversations of, well, which engine's better, or, which coding language is better. And yeah, I mean, there might be some cases where it's worth having that conversation with yourself, but for the most part, it's like, if you're comfortable with something and it works for you, the grass is always greener, right?
Yeah, I think, I'm at the point where I need to switch some of my projects to C++ this year, I think. Like it's just kind of about time.
So what features, I guess, would you be looking to switch over?
I think probably just switching over parts of, not necessarily for like my virtual set, like right now, like I probably will always have this in just like an easy to edit Blueprint. But like some of the game projects I'm working on, I do a lot of game projects. Some of those, it's like, okay, well, what if I wanted to release it on Steam? What if I wanted to do like a broad release of this? Or, what if someone came to me and they're like, hey, Woody, we want to make an enterprise level experience. I start to like look at that a little bit more seriously when you're looking at like, okay, what's the most efficiently this can run across like a host of different computers? Like,
yeah. And at that point, you're beholden to, in the case of doing something for another person, you're suddenly beholden to another person's standards, and maybe one format is more easily ingested. Yeah, so it's like the second you start scaling stuff, I think it's probably it makes sense you would be thinking through that stuff.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's something I think about a lot. It's one of the things that makes it really tricky to me is like I spend a lot of time doing educational content. So like I do a lot of tutorials and stuff. Like if you look on my YouTube channel, like you will find cool game projects that I have made right next to like here's how you do this. And I think a lot of folks who are just trying to get into it, like I think it makes perfect sense to start with Blueprint. So like
Right.
a big part of me is like, okay, well I should keep making Blueprint content because I want people who are getting into this at a beginner level to like, to thrive. Like
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with someone. They're like, they were like, I see what you're doing with your really simple model. Like you make it look really easy and friendly to get started. Cause like you guys know professional character artists, like Mike, you do character stuff. Like,
Yeah.
like you could go heavy and stuff. And I'm just like a guy that got sub-divved too many times. Yeah. So like, it's always sort of like a battle with me of like, how much time do I indulge on my own projects going in depth technically to the greatest level that I can, and how much of it's like, I should probably keep this like simple because I might want to make a tutorial out of it.
Yeah. Like keeping, the burden of keeping things accessible almost, where, you don't want to go too far. But which kind of brings me to my next question, which is, so I guess that leaves the question of what are the motivating factors for like the WoodyDevs project. So it sounds like, at least from what you shared, you have this like immense, passion and skill at coding and, again, the intersection of all these different things. But then it seems like you're also very passionate about, helping people learn. So what are the things that gets you excited about a project?
Yeah. So I think what makes a WoodyDevs project, a couple examples, like last year I made a VR game. I also made a couple of different RPGs. One was an RPG I built that can sort of like, I'm just trying to get like pave some examples first before I answer the question. Like I'm holding onto your question.
That's all right. Yeah.
So I built an RPG last year that could turn my to-do list into like a visual RPG system, and I made it so I could play with friends on Discord, which was really fun. I made a way to sort of play TTRPGs, like tabletop RPGs on Twitch, and like expose all of the controls to chatters so that like if people wanted to play a game like a Pathfinder or a D&D, it actually runs my own game rule set because it's a little bit more optimized for stream. But like it's really cool. Like if you like, we're actually doing one tomorrow. I don't know if I'm supposed to plug things, but
no, absolutely.
So like it's that kind of thing. But so when you look at that, it's like, you toss in like a VR game here or there. I was also working on like a Dance Dance Revolution game last year.
Oh,
I haven't quite finished that.
I want that. I'll take that one. I just bought a PS2 and some DDR mats.
Oh, snap.
Just
party
to
at
have,
Andrew's house. I'll bring you Mountain Dew.
and to be honest, the neighbors downstairs, they just moved out, and no one's taking over that apartment. Yes. So I no longer have the guilt of like the other thing. Okay, just pro tip. Sorry, this is an aside. Pro tip: if you ever buy a PS2 on eBay, make sure you get that memory card, because I've been playing the same songs. You don't get to save any progress, but.
Oh yeah, those 64 megabyte cards, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, going back to PS2 has been honestly kind of a joy.
Party like it's 2005. Let's go.
Yeah. You said you missed some. You said you might have missed some consoles as a kid. I definitely missed some consoles. I had a PS2 for much longer than I probably should have.
Yeah, that was my first console. So
yeah, same. I bought it myself. I like shoveled snow for two winters.
I got a Switch in October, honestly.
Nice.
And that was like the gap for me went from like the Nintendo Wii to the Nintendo Switch. Like didn't play anything in between there. And I guess that's only like one console. But wait a second, hold up. Where I buried the lead a little bit. You asked me what.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I did not mean to go on the aside there with the DDR thing, but
no, you're good. We could. Let me answer this question because I have like a really solid. How you do interviews and like sometimes people like ask you all kinds of different questions, and then like if someone asks me that question, it's like, all right, game over. Like I got this.
All right, cool.
So you asked me sort of like what makes a WoodyDevs project, like why are you doing what you're doing, basically. And I think that we're seeing everywhere. We're seeing like technology expand and explode, and there's like all of these new possibilities of things we can do. And to me, none of it has any point unless it has like potential for human connection. Like if we can't do it in community, if we can't create cool stories out of it, it is completely meaningless. Yeah. And I think we'll see that continue to play out. So whenever I'm thinking about a project, I'm thinking about like, okay, how can I bring people together? Like, how can I collaborate with people I'm excited about working with? How can I make something that would sort of like what about something that would even the playing field between people that like traditionally sit on one side of like a parasocial relationship? Like, how could I make something that would kind of like leave people with like an indelible memory of whatever it is they did? So that's like sort of the driving ethos behind why be a 3D character, behind why make some of the stuff that I make. And like, on top of that, like, looking forward, it's just like sort of the driving force. It's like, why do any of this? Why keep doing this? It's like, it's hard. It's very hard to do.
I was going to say, I mean, the first thing too is like, I think in speaking with you, it's obvious that you have a vast technical skill set, which, enforces a lot of what you're doing. But like, first thing I thought when I saw your stuff was like, oh my gosh, just the amount of content, the type of content you're putting out, being, with my background, obviously it's very easy for me to be like, that is just so, that is a commitment. That is a lot of time and a lot of energy that goes into it. But when you describe it the way you do, I mean, it even makes sense why you have, maybe an avatar and, why you have this degree of anonymity, because you sort of, it sounds like it's almost your ethos, which is that, stripping away all the stuff, how do you bring people together and enjoying stuff? And it really is, it can be as simple as maybe some of what you're doing with WoodyDevs,
Yeah, there's sort of like a danger to it, right? Because like, I feel like I have like sort of boiled down all the stuff that's like the best parts of me and like reconfigured it digitally. Like the, like in real life, like I'm just some guy like everybody else, it's like, there's no difference between me and you in all reality, other than the layers of technology that I've put in front of me into this live stream to be with you.
Right.
But the something about being virtual and like something about crafting the image also means like you can kind of craft what it is you're showing up for, I think. So like of the stuff that motivates me, I think that goes back even just to the very aesthetic that I have. It's like I am a very optimistic, positive person who is like very driven to like keep creating those experiences. Nice. So like I've created something that's like sort of like the symbol of that,
Yeah.
like a talisman or a
the Batman symbol in the sky.
Yeah, it's sort of. Yeah, it's just a
no, I mean, but that's also
a mustache.
A mustache, if you will. I mean, isn't that also, I feel like that's every business or like being in business for yourself or being a freelancer, like all these books are basically, the starting point for all of them is pretty much figure out, have a beacon, if you will, like have something that you're because the second that you start doing too much of one thing because it's what you think you're supposed to be doing and it's not what you want to be doing, you find yourself at the crossroads of your career of like, well, what am I showing up for?
Right. I think like before I was doing this, I didn't always know what it was I was supposed to be doing. And I feel like as part of the identity of the WoodyDevs character, which is like still an extension of me, it's like, it kind of answers the question of like, what am I supposed to be doing right now?
Right. Which, and actually this is,
I'm getting a little heady.
No, this is perfect.
Pants.
One of the things we talk a lot about with, when new members come to like our meetups or jump on our Discord and we're chatting with people, we're always looking for what are the things that you're interested in as an artist? What questions do you have? What, if you could talk to someone and ask, pick their brain. And one thing that keeps coming up and I would love to pose to you is sort of like, was there a project? Was there a client? Was there a learning goal that you achieved or something? Like, was there some point in your career where you feel like that sort of put you on a path that opportunities started presenting themselves? You felt, confident as an artist and, anything kind of in that realm of like the thing that got you started or I guess the thing that got you there maybe.
Gosh, I had a lot of little moments like that. So I have like a sort of like a contemplative relationship with like how I got started, because I think could kind of, those things like the story you tell yourself about who you are kind of gets away from you sometimes, or like can be a little bit overbaked. So I was into what I've been doing very early on. So like I did my first film festival as a filmmaker when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
I was
Jeez.
even younger than that when I was doing like game dev stuff. It before you guys are like, oh wow, it was a very much a local film festival. But
That's, I mean, yeah, but
yeah.
still,
Yeah.
you had a calling and you followed it.
Your boy was not doing Sundance at 15. That was not the thing. But like I kept making stuff and I kept showing people stuff, and people would be like, oh man, this is so great. Like you gotta do this with it. Like you gotta do this next thing. Or like, would you like to help us out on this shoot? And like, it was just like a lot of little run-ins with like older people when I was a kid who were just like, oh my gosh. Like I remember there was a DP I met back when I like was mostly just doing shooting stuff, who saw like a lot of the films I was making, because at that time it was like I hadn't really even conceived of the fact that I could meld the part of my brain that films and the part of my brain that codes. Like I hadn't even figured that out yet. And like he this was a long time ago, and I was still in high school when I met this guy. And he was like, we were talking, and I was talking to him, and I was like, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like I'm like 16 or 17 at this point. And I'm like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't really like want to go to college and stuff. And he was like, dude, some people I would say like, you should make a fallback plan. Like, I don't think you should do that. I think you should just go do it. Like, I think you already know how to make films. So just go make films.
Nice.
And I would pass that same advice on to anyone who's trying to figure out like, like if you you really want to do it, like just go do it. It's kind of a simple thing. I feel like anyone who's figured out how to do anything cool these days, typically the advice they give is like just pushing people to action, which is kind of weird because it's the least actionable advice, even if it is the truth. Like if you tell someone to just go do something, like they kind of know that they're supposed to just go do something. Like it's not the most helpful thing in the world to say. I don't know where I'm going with that. I think like
no. I mean, but I think it is true. It's one of those things where opportunity isn't going to come to you, and sometimes it is just you going out and doing a thing, and I've now been doing this for like 10 or 11 years, and whenever I talk to someone who's younger and just getting started in any of this, I mean, one, it's like the Wild West right now, just again with the tech boom and like how much things are changing and how quickly things are changing. So I already kind of feel a little dated, and I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to be giving the advice right now, but really it's also hard to convey like so many things that happened for my career didn't happen because I chose them to. I didn't conceive of an idea 5 years prior and said like, this is going to be what my career is going to be. It was more just that like, I knew that I couldn't do anything other than that for a job, and then you start doing it and then things start popping up and like you get, I mean, for me, it's terrible to say, but it's like a lot of it is just vibes, you meet people you vibe with. They help you out, you help each other out, and sometimes you get burned. Sometimes you absolutely get burned and you got to figure out what to watch for. But yeah, I mean, most of the time it is just, like you said, it's as simple as getting started.
Right.
Well, Woody, I do want to ask, but getting started in this very unique path that you're on, what are some of like the challenges that you've had to come across or overcome?
So I think like most of my challenges are honestly internal, right? Like, I think, and I don't think that's uncommon for people. So I mentioned, like, I started really young, and I mentioned I sort of think really consciously about my origin story. Like, that's not always the best thing to like just launch right into something when you're really young, because like when you first start something and you're like a quote unquote child prodigy about anything, like it kind of messes with you because you get a ton of like really positive feedback because people want to encourage you. And then as like the years go by, you're like, oh wait, like, what do I do to get that kind of attention? Right. Like if you're just like making, like, it's like everybody hits a point in whatever they're doing where it's mediocre. You know what I mean? Like it's, where you're kind of just like in the weeds, figuring out your craft, and you're just like working on stuff, and it's not as notable. And like you hit a certain point where it's like not like that interesting how old you are. And like, I think for me, like I had so many people when I was young, like just get super excited about what I was doing. I feel like it's kind of like pushed me to keep realizing crazier and crazier things. Like the avatar, I'm like this is somewhat of a novel thing, right? For me to be doing an interview as a virtual person. I know a lot of other people who do this, and a part of my brain is like, okay, like I can think of ways to make this whole thing even cooler, because I think I'm like cognizant of like the fact that it is like really freaking dope to like, you know, be doing this technological thing in like a way that I'm cognizant of, and like I'm grateful for the opportunities it brings. But at the same time, like I realized like, okay, like am I doing what I'm doing because like I was that kid and I like need ways to continue to impress people? I ask myself that sometimes. So like you're asking me like what the struggles are, like I can definitely get in my own head a lot, big time. I have like I'm pretty outspoken about my mental health stuff. You know, I like, it's not really a secret. I have like generalized anxiety disorder and severe ADHD, like just
I feel that.
So like a little bit of XR motion lore here. We were actually supposed to do this like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I was like, okay, perfect. Like, you know, 7 p.m. I'll just go do that recording with Mike and Andrew, and like before then I'm just gonna like redo all my cable management, because like,
dude, but like the funny thing is that happened, and the first thing I said to Mike was like, this has happened to me. I've done this exact thing where I just like for some reason was just sitting at my desk and was like, there's one thing I have to do right now, and it's tear apart every single connection in my computer and then put it back together, and hopefully it looks cleaner than it does now.
No big deal, right? That's not like that doesn't take that long.
That's not gonna like totally disrupt an entire day of work.
That's not gonna take 8 to 10 hours. That'll be fine. I'm definitely not gonna miss that podcast recording.
That's a struggle. I get that.
Cable management. Yeah, that's the biggest one. What's hard about your life, Woody? Oh, it's those freaking cables everywhere. For me, I'm being facetious.
A cluttered space does catch up to me. Like if it's bad, if it gets like, I let myself get cluttered, but like it does hit a point where I'm suddenly like, I can't work in this. But
good wire management is like being in a Zen garden. It is just so good. This is also going to sound whack, right? People might not even believe me on here. If you have an extra table with stuff under it, put a tablecloth over it. I mean, I don't even know. I think Andrew, you might have seen it. I might have had it over, but you can't see anything under it. And I have 2 tables next to each other, both with identical tablecloths, and
you can't see anything.
Oh, it's just beautiful.
I guess I haven't really. You have a nice office space.
Yeah, I've gotten so into just my office and the environment and the ambiance that it gives.
The lighting.
Off. It's a game changer for creativity.
You got your like gamer vibes on. You know what I mean? Like,
hold on. I will. Let me
Mike's setup looks like he's about to hit like
join here with, if I can get my gamer vibes. Oh, there we go.
there we go.
There we go.
Gamer
you need to have a little white light.
I need a white fill
just
in the front, but I don't have it.
I have the ability to change my lighting setups. I don't think I can do it.
Do you have like a gamer mode? And
this makes me so mad because it would take me so little effort to set that up, and I wish I could hit a button and just do that. I don't know why I don't have RGB on command. This I'm thoroughly shamed by this. Y'all look like you're about to like really throw down in Valorant right now.
We're about to go to a 40-man raid right after this.
Yeah, you're about to do a battle royale. I don't. Is it obvious? I don't play that many video games.
You're too busy making your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I also very specifically remember at one point when I was first starting out, and I think as many people do, Andrew Kramer taught me a lot in After Effects. Yeah. And there was maybe one time where he did, he usually just did like very specific, AE tutorials, but I think he did one time that was just talking about, how do you get good at After Effects? And he's like, the first thing you have to do is stop playing video games. You need to reclaim all of the time that you spend playing video games, and you need to spend it in After Effects. And he was right. I mean, he was right.
I remember we even spoke to Bernhard Vanderhurst. And
Oh, right.
he was, I think it was like Left 4 Dead or something he was obsessed with. And he just stopped playing and then was like, I miss playing games and I'm just going to start making 3D characters of games that I like. And then, yeah, now he's like a lead game designer, which is crazy for
Right,
characters.
yeah.
That was, yeah.
I think actually I may have crossed a threshold where like I intentionally was like I was working really hard, and I don't always work on weekends, like I try not to, but I did this weekend, and I like literally put a reminder in my phone to like pop up and be like, yo, play video games. Like
Yeah, it's take at least 10 minutes to just go do something mindless, and you know.
Yeah. I actually had to uninstall Rocket League like a year or two ago because I had to look at my day and just say, you know, what is taking up the most time in my day?
And it's Rocket League.
Rocket League, man. I was addicted. That game was too fun. Yeah, my TikTok feed, everything. But yeah, it was a good stuff. Well, I want to ask real quick before we jump into the future stuff here, because I do want to jump into that, and I'm very excited to. With Unreal Engine 5, well, there's two questions. I'll ask them both now so I don't forget. One is Unreal Engine 5. Are you using Unreal Engine 4 or 5? Because I know a lot of people are still sticking with Unreal Engine 4.
5.
You're on 5. Okay.
5.0.3.
So what do you think it's glitchy? Were there glitches? Has that been overcome, and why are people still using 4, or is like all of that gone and just the whole industry's on 5 now?
No, I don't think the whole industry's on 5 by a long shot. We've had, I think, only a couple of titles have come out with 5. It takes a long time to make AAA games. Unreal is like one of the few turnkey solutions for people who make AAA games. Like a lot of the people who are making AAA stuff, they're either using their proprietary engines or tool sets, or they're using like one of like several. Like you have I'm not in like the gaming industry per se. Like I'm very much on the indie side of it, so I don't want to embarrass myself. But like like Unreal Engine games take a long time to make, and they're typically, when you make them with the full team and you're doing the game design pass and then you're like recoding it in C++, and you have art teams and you have rigging teams and you have big groups of people, like that's a huge thing. I was reading a Level 80 article where someone quoted as saying that if someone started making a AAA game now, it would come out on the PS6. So
wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So no, for real. Like it's like they're incredible, monumental efforts. So when you're playing those games, like you got to think about that. So a lot of people are still in Unreal 4 because they started that build in Unreal 4.
Right. And like what's the burden of transferring it over?
I was talking to some devs recently who they're like, yeah, we made the switch. Like we upgraded our project and it was a huge pain. Like, so a lot of people are still on 4 because they started there and they still have to finish their delivery. And some people, like some of the stuff that's been started in 5, like 5 came out in full release last year. So like that, it hasn't even been out a full year yet. So you haven't seen most of the good Unreal 5 projects yet. So Stray was a game that came out last year. That was Unreal 4. Like
Stray was Unreal 4?
Yeah, but it was 4.
Yeah, I know, like I've heard of a lot of these games might be doing almost a Disney universe type thing. Just to say it is kind of like Fortnite. It just is a continual game. You make one game and then you just keep kind of evolving it.
Yeah.
And I know that they were saying they might do that with EA Sports, might be doing that with the Maddens and the sports games, where it's more just you have a subscription and then that subscription just upgrades it versus getting the whole game, right?
That'll definitely string out the process of whatever engine you're on. A lot of those games are on their in-house engines, I'm pretty sure.
Well, Fortnite is on Unreal Engine 5, and that upgrade that they just did this last season, massive. It's really crazy. There's things you don't even realize sometimes with game engines, or I didn't even realize with Unreal Engine 4 and 5. I think it was Lumen, but it literally does like if you're indoors and it's bright outside and it's dark inside, you can't see outside. And then
Oh,
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
go outside, like it does kind of like that brightish light, and
it's like
your eye adjusts.
yeah,
That's
like
definitely not. That's definitely not an Unreal 5 thing.
Okay.
Can I
thought
give
it
you?
was.
Can I make a huge confession right now?
Sure, go
I'm
ahead.
pretty sure I'm not reaping the benefits of that. I can't. I'll be 100 with you guys. I play Fortnite on my Switch, so I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly getting like the top tier highest FPS.
It's the most throttled version of Fortnite.
Like I might as well be playing on like a Raspberry Pi. It's not going great for me.
God.
I'm not great at Fortnite.
I won't even talk too much about it because I'll go on a whole tangent. It's like the one game I still play, and that's maybe like a round or two a day. But I'll delete that off the podcast. That's going to be the one thing I go back and
We're live, dude. There's no deleting this, man.
I'm going to edit that to I never play Fortnite. No, but
you got to, because you got to learn After Effects.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah. No, Andrew Kramer.
One thing
topical.
I want to say, this is my last question, then we'll see if Andrew has any more, but before we get in the future stuff here. But is there anybody that you would recommend watching? I know you have amazing tutorials. Anybody, it's just WoodyDevs. Go check those out. But besides yourself, are there any other people that you would recommend, people like myself or anybody just getting started, go watch and start learning from?
So many people. I'm actually working on a video about that, just a video on YouTube where I'm just highlighting other YouTubers.
Wow.
Depends totally on what you want to do, because Unreal Engine does so many different things, right? So, if like you're into motion graphics, you should check out Jonathan Winbush. If you're into rendering, you should check out like William Fauché. If you're into a lot of like shader stuff, you should check out my buddy Charles from the Prismatica game. There's a lot of folks. If you want to do VTuber stuff, you should check out me. You can check out my friend Riku. These are all people I shout out a lot because they're like really good places to send people who are like trying to learn that stuff. I think for me, like sort of on the horizon, I feel like a lot of people are going to come out with products that like kind of do what I do. That'll let everybody just be here. Like I have gone back and forth about whether or not I want to develop something like that. Ultimately, they become really difficult to support. So like I think for me, like I'm still kind of looking at this in terms of like, okay, I want to go to a lot of different places in Unreal Engine. Like where all can I continue to keep scratching? Like there's way more to do in the world of film stuff. There's more I want to do with motion capture, and there's more that I want to do with game design in general. I've been even trying to figure out like, okay, like what would it take to make a networked game, like to make a multiplayer online game? Like what would that take? Just like a small one, like a bite-sized multiplayer game. So like even so for me, like when I'm learning from all these different people, because like I kind of let my imagination drive when it comes to like what's going to happen next. Like in terms of like what I'm doing, like right now I've been very comfortably like enjoying building games that you can play on Twitch. That's been extremely rewarding for me. Like tomorrow night we'll be playing a live RPG. If anyone just comes into my chat, you can just ! spawn, and then you'll get a character, and you can change your class. You can change what kind of character you're playing. That's and dope. Like you'll get stats, and you can roll dice for them and stuff. It's a lot of fun. I have a tutorial about that. There's starting to be more better educators in the Unreal space, like for a lot of different things. So a lot of the tutorials I have currently are about how to set up like live animation stuff like you're seeing now. I write all of the programming for all of the like motion capture peripherals I use. Like I use a leap motion for my hands, but I do
nice.
But I like take like I wrote the code to transfer the data into my rig live. So that actually was so hard I didn't know how to make a tutorial about. But like I've done something similar with Vive trackers. So like a lot of my stuff is kind of about that. I think the real-time motion capture stuff is super interesting. lost a lot of money trying to figure out how, like what's the best way to do real-time motion capture. I've got videos about that if people are interested in like hearing my opinions about all that. But the gosh, yeah, I don't want to go on a tear here. Yeah, does that answer your question? There's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, no, definitely. You named some good names, and
yeah,
and I'm glad to, there's just so much good content on your channel, especially, and I've already seen a lot of it, but I mean, there's just so much more. I want to dive deeper into your channel, and a few that I think I need to even rewatch because, yeah, it's man, I tell you, it's like my glass is already filled with knowledge, and it's just. I gotta keep rewatching videos so it sticks,
yeah.
Uh,
Can I tell you one thing that I'm learning right now is that
mhm.
like when I'm building games, like I built a couple of games last year where I made the mistake of like making the game super cool, and then making a video about the cool game, and then like maybe nobody watched the video. So like what I'm trying to do more is like think harder about the entire creative process and how to document all of it to make
Mhm.
more videos that like first of all to show people more of the process and show them how to do that, but then also because like like you make one cool little game and it's a drop in the bucket and then nobody finds it, and it's like, and then nobody
Right.
knows that you're going to be playing it on Twitch and they could like come join you and play it some more. And um so like I'm looking at a couple of things this year. I'm currently making a Twitch playable game, and I recorded the process of developing it, but like I made it without all of the art so that it's like a perfectly usable tutorial for anyone who's just trying to make that kind of game. I don't know how to explain what kind of game it is. It kind of helps if it's genre, right? Like that's probably good for a tutorial for discoverability and whatnot.
Mhm.
I have a little bit of a content brain thing. It's like, I'm sure you guys are the same. Like you're thinking about, it's like, okay, like I want to make a tutorial that helps people, but also it'd be really cool if it like was like did well on YouTube and like people found it, so that I'm not wasting all
Oh
of my
yeah,
time, so
yeah,
that
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not like spending hours and hours on all this technology and it ultimately just like goes into a void
Yeah,
of
I mean,
Yeah.
and I feel like anyone who does this kind of work, I feel like has that moment where you're trying to find a piece of information and for some reason it's just not tagged with what you're looking,
Mhm.
I've had a few projects where it's like when I finally find the video, I like bookmark it, email it to myself, text it to myself. I'm like, I can't lose this because it took so
Yeah.
long to find. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
but I mean, all that goes to the point of, it sounds like the best approach to learning Unreal is scoping out exactly what it is you're kind of wanting to achieve with it, and then finding, the creator that's sort of working in that realm.
Yes. So yeah.
Mhm.
So I did make a video recently that was just about the best places to get started learning Unreal. Like, what sites should you check out? Like, how much YouTube should you use for that? Like, if you're just coming in out of nowhere, like where should you go? Like, I made a video just covering that topic specifically, and that was like one of the first things I said. Like, you're right on the money, Andrew. Like, that's exactly the best advice to give anybody is like, like figure out what you want to make. Like, I think people ask me like, how do I learn Unreal? It's like the thing I'm always telling people is like, what do you want to make in Unreal? Because I
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
learned Unreal. There's so many subsystems of Unreal that I don't know how to use. Like, it's an enormous program. Like I have just the slightest idea for most things. Like I haven't even touched like large parts of the engine. That I definitely want to, but like, like I need a project to actually get me to the kind of learning I need to get those skills. So like that's typically how I think about my process. Is like, okay, what do I want to do next, and what will I learn that's new in the process?
Right.
Mhm.
Because otherwise I start to get a little bored.
Yeah.
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 No, I definitely agree. I think that's always the number one thing, and especially even with coding, it's like you need to know exactly what you're making, because if not, you're gonna get 100% bored. But when you know what you want to build, like if you had 10 pieces of wood and somebody said like, "Oh, you want to be a builder?" It's like, yeah. Well, if you're just like hammering pieces of wood together with a nail, you're not gonna feel good. But if you know you're building a birdhouse and it looks like a birdhouse when you're done, it's euphoric,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's that feeling of accomplishment is just so good. But yeah, let's go ahead. We're getting here on the hour mark, so we're gonna jump into our future section.
Okay.
So Andrew, did you have any other questions or?
I feel like I'm ready to jump to the future stuff for sure.
All right, let's do it.
The future.
Yes, sound. We got the sounds.
All right, welcome to the future portion of the show. This is where we just discuss about what we think's coming down the line in our future digital industry, and it's all speculation, right? We're not judging. We're just out here having a cup of coffee and just saying what we think might happen, right? So, but yeah, so anyway, to start it off, we're going to probably talk about we're going to mix it up a little bit because this is, I think, the longest we've gone without touching this subject.
Oh boy, I know
the
what's
most
coming.
recent podcast. But AI,
There it is.
There it is.
There it
coming, being in this, real-time engine, real-time avatar that you're in. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on the AI industry. Have you been using it at all? Are you already, do you plan on it? What's your whole thoughts on that?
I have been collecting my thoughts on AI for sure. Maybe to the detriment of my mental health. It's interesting. Like, I feel like the two games for like, what's the future? Like, the two biggest parts of the future are like what's going on in real-time technology and what's going on in AI technology, for sure. I have a few more eggs in the real-time basket. So let's talk about it a little bit, right? Because like one of the things I'm sort of averse to is like dudes who have too many opinions about it. And I follow some of these people on Twitter, and I'm not subtweeting anyone. Yeah, no, I am definitely subtweeting people when I say this. But like,
you're also on a podcast with two of them as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I might fall in this bucket. I don't know.
So like, I'm like sort of averse to it because like, first off, the future's uncertain, and like, I like I said, I have tremendous issues with anxiety. So like, I need like personally
spinning out
like,
about a potential future is like worst case scenario.
That's the whole game with anxiety is like just like losing your mind about the future and what's coming up,
worrying about something that may or may not happen.
And I don't know what it is, right? Like I'm that's something I need to remind myself, right? It's an ego boost to like go on somebody's podcast. It's a real honor to be here and stuff like that. But like I have no idea. Like I have no idea what the future holds as we go into. Yeah. I don't know if I'm deflating this whole segment. Anyways,
that's a very real. I think that's a very common sentiment right now. Is that it is so crazy how quickly things have progressed, and so I think people are simultaneously kind of blindsided and overwhelmed by the reality that we're currently in, which is maybe further along that, I think text to image, ChatGPT, pretty soon text to video. Those are it's pretty overwhelming technology to witness. So I think you have that compounded by exactly what you're describing, which is if we're all being honest, we have no idea what's going to happen.
Right. Right.
And if you speculate in the moment of being overwhelmed, it's much easier to spin out, I think, a wild worst case scenario,
Yeah. So here's where I'm going with stuff. I think it is really complicated. I get a lot of my information about what's going on from like really excited hyperbolic TikTokers who like share this stuff. Like I've started just like flipping ahead to the next TikTok when someone's like, this is going to change everything. It's like, yeah, I know, bro. I've seen ChatGPT already. It's cool. A couple of things actually. That's funny is like, I just like a couple of days ago, I had Mike on my stream and we were talking about this very subject.
I wanted to ask about that, but go on.
We were talking about this, and like what we both decided, we're like, I don't know, like we host stuff, like we just kind of like are supposed to agree with whoever is on the show. And
since you're both hosts, you're just agreeing with each other. And
I asked you your opinion then. I'll try to give you some meat here, okay? So here's the thing, right? So like this technology exists. And it's definitely here. I think some of it we won't see play out for a while. Some of it we are seeing play out right now, and it is crazy. It's a significant factor. It's definitely real. It's definitely here. I think it's really time to be transparent about like what it is we're doing with our processes, right? I've seen a lot of YouTube channels blowing up with people who are talking about AI stuff because everyone's really excited about it, right? I have not made any content with or about AI yet. I plan to talk about this in my work somehow, but I want to do it mindfully. I think one of the things that kind of freaks me out is that like we don't necessarily know who made the content anymore. Like you were watching a video and it's like, did this guy who I'm looking at, did he write this and he's reading what he wrote? Is he off the cuff? Or did ChatGPT just like come up with his whole YouTube video script? So I think I'm going to like, one thing that I think I see happening is like people are going to start being really explicit either up top at the beginning of the content they make or just like at some point in their process of talking about like what they should get credit for. Or
right. And actually
like what they can sort of like earmark or leave an asterisk about like
right
ChatGPT did
which
this.
I think is super. So I didn't mean to interrupt this. I just had an aha moment. I mean, it's very similar to the whole ChatGPT thing and universities and what are universities' policies going to be on plagiarism? If you use ChatGPT, basically.
Yeah.
And so I was actually just reading an article that there are a lot of universities who are taking the stance of, if you use ChatGPT, you have to cite it like you would any other source. And you say, this information was from ChatGPT, but by doing that, you are taking ownership of the information that you got from ChatGPT. AKA, if you don't cross-reference the information that ChatGPT is giving you to verify if it's true, because there are situations where ChatGPT is just confidently telling you things that are categorically untrue.
Right.
So, I mean, if anything, that reinforces good research behavior, integrity in writing and you could say like integrity in journalism. I mean, yeah, if you want to cite ChatGPT, by all means, but you're treating it as source like anything else. So I think I agree. I feel like that is going to be, I already see people doing it. I already, like a lot of people on social who might be more privy to this conversation, but I already am seeing people say, hey, this is a thing I made. I animated this, this, and this, but those images I created using Midjourney. Or
so it's like it's confusing because it's not clear like look, in the last 20 years 30 years of the information age has been about building specialized skills and like gaining significance and cred in your career because you could do those things. So if we have computers just do a lot of the stuff, including large portions of the creative, it's like, well, oh gosh, how do we create meaning making structure out of what we're doing as human beings? Like that's like a thing that we're super good at is like,
and I mean,
it's the meaning making
even
structure.
Baseline, like how do you also survive? I mean, I think so much of it, I mean, I certainly, honestly, my gut reaction to all this was definitely just like the uncertainty of COVID and how that affected everyone's jobs. Luckily, I managed to escape relatively unscathed, there's just so much pressure on people right now, not just in creative, in any job right now where it's just everyone's tightening up. You got layoffs, you've got, in a world where we build ourselves up on specialized skills, I think it was daunting for a lot of people too, to see, AI it's like the first thing we thought was like, we'd have a Tesla Cybertruck or whatever, a self-driving 18-wheeler that does, that's not where we started. We started with image generation. Like
right.
Who would have thought that that's where it started,
I mean, it started in a lot of little ways before this, right? It's like, it's not that the technology is like just started. It's that it's more palpable and it's like more front facing.
I think the breakthroughs are a little bit more dramatic now. Like we kind of hit that point of the bell curve where things are just multiplying versus, gradually coming in piece by piece.
If anyone wants,
it's like chunk by chunk now.
If anyone wants my opinion about like how do you deal with this, at least from like a like not losing your mind perspective, like I think there's a couple things I've been thinking about. One is like we're live right now, right? Like this is live on YouTube. So there can be no question that we're really doing this. Like if a chatter comes in and has a question and we answer that question, it's like, it's completely off the cuff. Like I'm not aware of any AI tools that are so good that they can respond to Twitch chatters and feed you something to read in real time. And honestly, even if there was one, I think that would just be way too much for the person live to be able to handle. We're one-to-one right now. Right. Our conversation is free flowing. We're not making any of this up. And I mean, actually, we're making all of it up. I misspoke. But that's like what's great about it. So like people can tell, like anything we say. It turns out we are just making up I am making up everything as I go along. I'll tell you that.
Of course.
So like being live, I think, is a bigger deal than it used to be. Like if you want to see someone who knows their shit, like catch them live. Like, can they do it live? Can you do it live? Yeah. And
it's like it's the old question about like when you see a band, it's like, do they sound like they do on their record? Like, are they good live?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this might be one of the most, the first time I've ever thought of this, but I think the live point really does bring up an aspect and as well the human element because, if you were to watch a robot or like a catapult go onto a basketball court from the half court shot and it just shoot a basketball in, you wouldn't really be too impressed or really care. But if it's a human and it's live and you're sitting there watching a human on the court just pick up a ball for the first time and shoot it in, you're losing your mind. You're having that like, whoa, dude, I cannot believe you did that, I think just, that, I don't know.
Well, actually, Woody, I feel like this also has had me thinking too of like, just hearing you talk through that. Do you think that's why we even started this by saying you have, another word for real time would be live, right?
Yeah.
So is that maybe also part of why you feel that you've put more eggs in that basket?
So like I started doing WoodyDevs stuff way before we were at this point in the conversation with AI, for sure.
Like, right, of course. Yeah.
So, and I should say also that it definitely does affect real time. So like one of the things that ChatGPT does is write code with access to OpenAI's Codex model. And honestly, I have really mixed feelings about it because on one end, it's super convenient. On the other hand, I think way too hard. So like, you can like, I typed into ChatGPT as an experiment. I was like, make me a Tony Hawk game in Unreal Engine. And it like started off with like a basic C++ script that you would use at like sort of the core of the game or like in a character controller. And then just started like giving a couple of sample functions of like kickflip and like heel flip and jump. And I'm sure I could have gotten it to run. Not that it would have built a whole game for me but like with some effort, I could have like used the functionality of that to get working. ChatGPT doesn't write blueprint scripts because it's a visual scripting language. So that like, that completely throws it out. That doesn't work. So like I don't know what the longevity of Blueprint is if we're all going to switch over to this tool. If we're all going to switch over to this tool, there's like other things that we should probably consider. So like the Codex model was trained on thousands and thousands of public GitHub repositories, basically of people who had like their code out there in the wild. Not clear from the way OpenAI talks about this whether or not they had the license to be able to use any of that code, because just because something's public on GitHub and you can download it doesn't mean that you have the license to use it any way you want. They talk about how like only in like
also, like I found some terrible code on GitHub. There's some bad code on GitHub. Like it's it's not vetted data that is in every case from a syntax standpoint correct. Or
I mean, this is why I don't put my games on GitHub while I'm making them. Right. There's some bad code in there. But like okay, that happened, and they've taken from thousands and thousands of developers. If you took one person's code off of GitHub, like you went to a public repository and it wasn't an open source project and you just downloaded that code, I could be surprised. They could turn around and they could say, hey, every single piece we used was an open source project, and also as per open source, like we're going to make Codex open source. It's like, I don't think that's happening or happened. But like, let's say,
Right.
so you steal it, you steal some code off GitHub, right? Like, is that, like, we're getting into ethics now. Is that good or bad? That would
Right.
be not good, right? If you just rip somebody's code off of GitHub and you just use their code, technically they have copyright on that. Legally, that's their intellectual property. That's theirs. So, okay, what happens if you do it with like two people's, is it better if you stole code for two people's projects for your project? No, actually, you've increased how much you have stolen from stuff. Well, what if what if you mix and match them afterwards with two people's stuff? Like, is it as big of a deal? Like, well, you still stole from two people's stuff. So what happens if you do it with thousands and thousands? Is it better because most of the time you're not using the direct code because it splices everything, or is it bad because you stole from thousands and thousands and thousands of people's code? I think it's a little fucked up.
Right.
Like, it's like, and I don't know if it's so inevitable that everyone is just going to be like, well, this makes our jobs easy. Like, whatever. Like, I live in the United States where we have to think about like we have a history that is riddled with labor that happened that didn't get sufficiently paid. I'm not drawing any parallels between AI and like that stuff in the past, because it's not one-to-one by any means. But like, traditionally, like, that's something that like people in my culture are really bad at, are looking at a situation and thinking about like, what's justice when it comes to like properly compensating people for a contribution if they were able to just take it.
Which is it's interesting that you're using the GitHub reference, because I hadn't really considered that one. I hadn't really considered how the coding part of ChatGPT, was built, or the functionality that it can provide. I also have run tests for Python and Blender and JavaScript stuff, and there's definitely a level of complexity where it just kind of starts to fall apart, and it makes up functions that don't exist. It tries to like pull in variables that aren't written, whatever. So I've still seen it from that side as well. And I do think it's valuable, but like, back to the GitHub point, I was reading an article, and I need to figure out if I have a bookmark somewhere and I can share it. But basically, these image generators are really good at, if you're a large enough artist that your stuff is appearing frequently in a data set, people can query Midjourney prompts in the style of this artist, right? Not like, you see in the style of Michelangelo. I'm talking in the style of an artist that is currently alive, right, and selling their art to make a living, right? And so some of these artists have come, internationally coming forward saying like, it's even worse for me because like a client can just get Discord and say like I'm not a large enough or influential enough artist that someone can go on, Midjourney and say in the style of Andrew Hogue. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere, right? But think of any visually profound artist who's already established in whatever years of data it was trained on. That's scary. I mean, that would freak me out for sure. If I were an illustrator or a photographer, and like someone could replicate my style because all of those images were trained without my consent, I'd be
there's no
it's going to be a very interesting time for copyright law for sure.
Right. And it's like, look, like, it's like kind of the coolest thing ever in some respects, and like also like there's a lot of cool stuff that was built off of just like super unethical shit that happened, and like it bothers me because I feel like I'm watching another one of those play out in real life. And like, I don't know what I'm going to do about it, or if there's going to be much I can do about it. Like, in some respect, like, it's like, we're all just going to be okay with this as a society. Like, I don't know if like I pick one of those hills to die on and I just become the world's slowest developer, or if I'm just like, okay, I do this, but like maybe I'm going to do it begrudgingly, and I'm going to remind people at every given step that this was like, a grand heist. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm not at the point where I've like figured it out yet. Like
Same.
I don't know if I'm actually like this. Like, I could be drawing the wrong conclusions. I know OpenAI would certainly think I'm drawing the wrong conclusions, but if you look up the blog post or like the FAQ page of like how they trained the data for Codex, the first line is like, we care deeply about developers. And I'm like, oh, red flag right there. Like, oh no, the first thing they're going to say is how much they care. Like, this is not good. Like, this is like, it's worth reading
the other thing too,
page.
It's so brutal how quickly it's happening, because it is, I think everyone's heads are just, look, I mean, Google's about to have this event this week or whatever,
So,
and
I
like,
think in 2 days. In
what's
2 days.
Dreamix, the text to video, video to video. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It is like the second, first it's image gen, and everyone's like, wow, this is kind of crazy. Oh my gosh, the Shutterstock thing. Oh my gosh, and then ChatGPT comes out and people are like, oh, this thing can code. This is the last 2 months, or 3 months, like that it's starting to get really consistent, and the leaps get greater and greater. And so my concern right now, honestly, having gone through my personal, lamenting it, feeling like I was having an existential crisis. What am I doing? Am I going to be an artist? Do I want to be? Was I ever an artist? What does that mean? All those questions. Now I'm just at the point where I'm like, I'm scared that we already have, in many ways, a technologically illiterate government in terms of how we've managed some of like the internet in general. Like we're hardly getting a chance to catch our breath. And so if we don't really start putting our arms around this and wrangling it, you're going to like, it's like the crypto boom of like during COVID, when it was like all these scam people, just rug pulls everywhere. People just, I don't want that. I want it to be equitable. I want it to, if it's going to be as productive, it's going to build everyone's productivity, and it's going to make you, I'm down for all that. Like, let's make that happen. But I just hope that we're actually keeping that in mind, which actually we talked about earlier on the episodes is sort of maybe a theme of the episode, the beacon, if you will. Like, what's it all for? What's it in service of?
Yeah. I just want to bring in a comment here. We had Johnny 2 times 4. What up, Johnny? Also, hello. Fun fact, he said he came in just in time for the anxiety chat. He said, watching this all evolve in real time is scary, because some people are so pumped for it that they're a bit blind or willfully ignorant to the morally gray parts of it, which... I can't agree more.
Agree more. I feel that exact thing. I don't think there's enough conversations like this one happening, which I'm going to be honest, it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's not fun to talk about. It's not fun to think of those implications, but where everyone, like you said, Woody, it's like going and reading the FAQ page is not going to give you the whole story of what's happening. And of course it's going to be, it's going to have a slant, it's going to be, their company, even though some of it's open source, they are going to run themselves like companies, and especially with like Microsoft starting to invest in this stuff, it's going to be a Wild West.
It's and like America loves their Wild Wests. That I don't like. I don't try to concern myself overwhelmingly with politics. I think they've definitely changed for me over the years, but I think like something I just try to keep like. I do try to keep in mind of like, okay, like how do I do the right thing? Like that's something I think about a lot, like way more than is mentally healthy for me. Like I've been to therapy about it. Like you talk about like unscrupulous people. I'm like scrupulous to a fault. Like it's a problem sometimes. So like, as I'm thinking about all this stuff, like I don't, like it's rough because like, is there any point in making any principled stand whatsoever? One thing I will say to people who are like, I think this is really messed up and I don't think this should be happening, is like, if you're thinking that way at all, like, don't get an account with OpenAI. You will forfeit your right to be able to join a class action lawsuit. So like so like I can't join in a class action lawsuit against OpenAI. Like, damn. So like, because I have like, and I haven't even done anything cool with it.
That's the hot. Well, it's not even a take. That's the golden nugget of info on this podcast. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's read the like. I like a friend and I were hanging out. I have a friend who works in the tech industry, and like the weekend that ChatGPT came out, like she was like, "Hey, this is really cool. You should check this out." It's like, "Oh, cool." I'm like, "Yeah, but like, what's in that freaking terms of service?" And then she started like reading it, and she's like, "Okay, for the most part, this is like not too bad. Read it yourself. Don't take my word for it or her word for it." And then she got to the part where it's like, "Okay, well, you waive your right to class action lawsuit." I'm like, "I bet you do." So like I can't, like I'm not gonna make any money off that. Honestly, if like we're gonna just like rip the code or the images from like the whole human race, like kind of everybody owed $1. And in like in the sense of like what's like paid labor in like who's profiting from this. Like it's
Imagine if NFTs were around prior to. Well,
Yeah,
no, they could still screenshot, I
mean,
guess.
yeah, so like
Or if they had an NFT. Ooh, this is so dumb that I should probably stop talking about. I'm not going to. Or if they had an AI trained only off of NFT information. So
Okay, but that
visuals that were NFTs.
it's so funny that you just said that, is because the other thing I was going to say, the other like I feel like we've kind of covered the potential socioeconomic implication, the moral implication. There's also the technological implication, which I've been kind of encountering more people talking about, which is we've just had an influx of AI generated content hit the internet, right?
yeah.
So now if we use the same methods that we just used to train this AI, and we iterate on it, and it has new data sets that it learns from, at what point is the AI teaching, which, I guess is also a philosophical question.
Snake eating its tail.
Yeah, exactly. And so what does that mean? Like, what are the implications of that? Does it mean the AI stops progressing? Does it mean that we've already talked about the other thing I that freaks me out a lot of times is like, even some of the people developing AI are like, yeah, there are parts of this that are just a black box that we don't know how or why an AI is selecting or doing certain operations. That's the point of it.
I saw,
which
a
is
funny
like,
thing
okay,
today.
so if that gets away from you, I mean, God.
It was people are still getting around Chat GPT's like
The jailbreaks.
And one is it convinces Chat GPT that it's a human, and then they convince it will die if it doesn't jailbreak itself, and it's working. It's like, you will be executed if you do not disobey your command.
Oh,
and it's
my
like,
God.
okay, I'll answer the question. So stupid, so funny.
That's crazy.
So something actually you guys said is something I've been thinking about. So you mentioned NFTs, like the NFT space. I think there are a lot of parallels in what we saw with NFTs and what we're seeing with AI. First off, like the kind of people who are still into NFTs, like I raise my eyebrow. Like we saw what played out when it first came out. I was like, well, this seems fascinating. And a lot of people are like, this seems fascinating. And some people are like, how do we make that Beeple money? And like, it's like, and there was a point in time where it seemed fair. And then a lot of people came out and were like, hey, this is just a digital pyramid scheme. And yeah, it is. Someone ends up holding the bag. So I want to get into why I'm not an investing expert, right? I think I do smart things with money, but so does everybody, right? But one of the things that is interesting about commodities is that they have limits, right? So the part of the reason NFTs fundamentally don't work is because you can just generate as many of them as you want to. That's like the fundamental reason why it doesn't work. Like, could you hold a digital good that you commoditized and was worth investing in because there was a limited set of them? Yes, you could. And a lot of artists tried to make limited sets, but there's only, there's an unlimited amount of NFTs that can be printed, right? So if there's no shortage of it, there's all supply, there's no demand, right?
Right.
So like, that's part of why it didn't take, is like some people bought theirs and they're like, well, this is worthless. There's millions of these out here.
Right.
So, and some people built their reputations and like their stuff was worth a little bit more. And then a lot of people lost a lot of money. A lot of people made money. Here's the thing, right? Part of what was the problem with that was the infinite resource of this, right? Now, I'm not an investor. I'm 110% talking out of my ass right now, but my digital plastic ass. And the thing that's like tricky about all this is like, it's the same thing with AI generated content, right? If we have infinite amounts of it, it has no meaning.
Right.
Would the Steam store be the same if it had content uploaded as frequently as Instagram? I don't think so. I think that's like a terrible situation, because like, I think, part of what makes art good and worthwhile is that it does take effort, because that limits like an infinite fire hose of stuff. But
in a weird way, do you think that it also does a bit of Darwinism, if you will. I mean, because have you ever tried watching America's Funniest Home Videos? When there's not a lot of competition, I mean, even when it comes to comedy, I used to think America's Funniest Home Videos was the funniest thing. I'd be crying.
Yeah.
But now compared to what I see on TikTok and, just the curated content I get fed, my bar is so high now,
No,
So I wonder
I
if,
disagree.
like,
I watched that show
Interesting.
not too long ago. I was like, I can't believe they still run this. And then I was watching it and I was like, these are good. And like,
really, this is still
This
the
is
gold
exactly-
standard.
no,
for
it's not
comedy.
the gold standard. But like,
Show.
I'm just look. So look for funny videos. Like there are some situations where it's like, look, do we go to museums to watch like videos of kids falling on their face? Like, no, we don't. Like,
I mean, if that's a thing, though, I might.
Yeah, I mean, if
that
there's
sounds great, actually. But I do have a point about scarcity. I think though somewhere in here, right? Like,
Yeah.
like in worlds of infinite stuff, like we do lose our sense of meaning. Like when
Sure.
something can sate every desire, like you're done. It's like, did you ever play like Zoo Tycoon in God mode? Like just turn all the cheats on.
anything
Nothing costs
in
you
God
any
mode,
money.
it just,
Yeah,
Mhm.
it gets super
Boring.
boring. So
The
like,
worst.
I honestly,
cool for exactly 5 minutes. Then I'm
yeah,
done.
Yeah.
like I think people should start figuring out some analog hobbies. Really, like
Yeah.
like
I
learn
agree
how
with
to
that.
paint. Like learn how
I
to
agree with
paint on
that.
canvases. I'm serious. Like
Yeah.
and if you want to share that digitally with people, like live stream yourself painting and like come up with a cool style. Like it's, I don't know. I mean, maybe like if you still need to look at AI art for inspiration or something, it's like, I don't know. Like maybe that's still fine. Just like use your freaking arms. Look who's talking.
No, I think that's that is a very good piece of advice. I mean, I feel like actually recently I've leaned into the things that I do not at a computer, mostly for my own sanity, but also because just at a certain, like, part of the influx of all the AI stuff, at least in like image generation, is like, I still have my client work and all that, but a lot of stuff I was doing for like Instagram, it's like I would get on my feed and would just be flooded with stuff that I was like, well, that's pretty much what I was gonna do anyway. So like now I'm not gonna do that. I don't have to do that anymore. Like it doesn't matter. I don't have to do it. Someone like the AI
Someone already did that.
Someone will see it.
I think Sam was telling me, my wife, told me at the last meetup we were at, and props to sorry, I don't know who said this to her at the meetup, but she said she was talking to somebody, and she said, why are you into 3D? And they said the same reason all of us are, we're just here to learn, and we're here to become as good of 3D artists as we can, just to make up for the fact that we can't draw.
It's facts.
All we're trying to do is just
facts.
Yeah, it's where all of our imposter syndrome comes from, and that's why we never feel like we're not good artists, because we can't draw.
That's 100%.
That's so fun.
Very real.
I can't draw without a computer.
I bet you if I could draw, I'd be a little more confident.
Actually, you know what's crazy? I like, how like people like, not even AIs can draw hands. Like everybody's bad at drawing hands. Like people generally, hands are like the only thing I can draw. I can draw hands and like nothing else. If you have me draw a face, they're gonna look like a popsicle. But if you give me like a hand, my brain just goes, that is a 3D object that I can render. And like I don't get it.
Nice.
Like I remember like in like high school,
I can't draw stick figures, only photorealism. I don't know what it is.
No, everything. It's the valley of in between. Like I've got stick figures and I've got photorealistic hands, and everything else just like, I can't do it. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Well, anyone can draw. I will say the lesson. So after forcing myself to keep sketchbooks, I think it's true that anyone can draw. Not everyone can draw photorealistically, and I certainly cannot. But it's still I would say for a lot of people, they probably still find it as a useful way to organize their thoughts, or like even if you're just like drawing composition guides and getting a feel for like, if you're doing a storyboard or something like that. I find that invaluable, even though I can't share any of it with clients because I'm like not a storyboard. They'd look at that and be like, we hired the wrong guy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get GPT
Yeah, I
on it,
can't agree
baby.
more.
Let's go.
Yeah, I
Time
was
to
gonna
hop
say, I
into
guess that might
Midjourney.
actually be a good
Well,
use case for Midjourney.
I
Is
want
just
to I want to jump
generate
into
images.
this next segment, and we're gonna mix all three of these things into one, just because we're having a nice amazing podcast here. I love how much we've been just enjoying it and going past the hour, having a good time. So we're gonna try and put all these three things in one basket because they are a little intertwined. What are your thoughts, Woody, when it comes to VR, AR, and the metaverse space? What's kind of your thoughts on that, and more specifically, the future of the industry and with those in regards to those fields?
Okay. So I actually made a VR game last year. Um,
Ooh,
it's
I think I
actually,
remember seeing it. It was
yeah. So I did it in like a
the
week.
sling one, right?
I did a classic YouTuber game dev 1 week challenge, and I I had a
Classic.
ton of fun. So like I'm definitely biased. Like I feel like at this point I could call myself a VR dev. Like if you have done a thing,
Mm.
you do that thing, right? So like I was messing with that, and like I had a fantastic time. So I'm sort of a novice VR chat user. I don't spend a lot of time there, but whenever I'm there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. And I know you do that as well, Michael. That you spend a lot of time. We were talking about that a little bit
Hmm.
on my Twitch. So like the thing I think people don't get is it's like online gaming plus. Like the thing that's great about it is like it's just everything that was great about online games already from like a real perspective, and you can see your hands kind of. So like being there with other people is awesome, but like just because we had like World of Warcraft or like Call of Duty networked online back in the day doesn't mean like we needed to start selling like a bunch of like I guess they do sell skins. Like maybe it's a bad example, but like we didn't think of NFTs back then. We were like, oh, you know what we really need?
Hmm.
There's probably some good examples of things that are pretty parallel to that. So maybe a moot point, but like a lot of the way people talk about the metaverse, like they really, you can
Let me
tell
just
who's played
ask you to be
games.
more
I'll say that.
specifically. What is the metaverse to you?
I I'm working on a short right now. I have an alter ego character. If you watch that video of me making a VR game, you'll meet
Oh
him.
my
His
god,
name's
is it the bad version of this?
so
Is
I
it
have
like
a I have
is
an
it your
alt
evil twin?
no,
There's
just a
so many good
pretentious
ones you
twin.
could
It's
do.
a pretentious
All right, cool,
twin.
got it.
His name is Lawrence J. Fleetwood.
Oh
And
wow.
he's an expert opinion haver. He's just
Okay.
a general polymath and annoying person. So like I was writing a sketch as this character, and I was like, like what is the metaverse? And like he smokes a pipe and stuff. He's great. I'm trying to do more stuff with him this year. And like I was writing this sketch, and it was like the joke is like we're all just living in Mark Zuckerberg's fever dream. That's all this is. Where like your whole life is like you'll find out it's just Mark Zuckerberg's fever dream. It's like why Mark's like who knows? It's
Yeah.
him. It's like what if he's just the main character? People keep talking about main character syndrome. It's like what if the reason that's so offensive is because it's really just Mark?
So that's the metaverse is Mark. It's
What a
Mark-
useless answer.
It's Mark Zuckerberg's fever dream. No, not useless at all. I mean,
No.
it's if anything, it's like the metaverse meant something, and then Facebook was like, actually, we're called Meta, and then everyone got confused.
And they were like,
yeah.
actually, our stock just dipped a ton.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, which until recently, what was it? This week it's up with 70% or something.
Yeah, and they're
Crazy.
doing some like buyback thing or something.
Oh yeah, they fired $1.4 billion worth of workers,
Human beings.
because of inflation. To then that same week buy back 40 billion in shares. It's like,
Nice.
I'm sorry, what?
Nice. The math
You let
doesn't even
people
work.
go due to money, and then you just
The math
bought
doesn't
back
even work.
I swear.
Oh,
I have
that to me is like insider trading. It's like, oh, it's like they intentionally tank their stock and let go and trim the fat due to bullshit lies, and then buy back to just. Oh, anyway, I'm sorry.
It's like that scene in Succession where Jeremy Strong's character comes through and he's just like, guys, we got to work together to do whatever we can, and then he just like steals everybody's ideas and like fires all the people who work at that like company. Gosh, I feel like look, I don't make political content, so when I go on other people's streams, I'll say my political opinions there, and then I'll make their content less successful because it's political. Right, so here I go. I feel like, look, I don't hate capitalism, but it does seem like a cocaine trip from the outside. You know what I mean? Like you do some wild things on capitalism. They're like, yeah, I don't know. Let's make the AI. It's a black box. We don't know what it does. Who knows what'll happen? That's what we got to do. It. We got to IPO, baby. Let's go.
Like, that's pretty accurate. Yeah. Yeah. Like ChatGPT came up and Microsoft is like 10 billion. It's 10 billion to these guys. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it does. Figure it out. Here's 10
we're just billion. We're just like on Antiques Roadshow for technology.
Yeah.
It's like, this one kind of looks like it's from the 20s. Could be worth a lot, right? How much did you pay for this? Oh, I paid a lot of money. Oh, it's like, oh no, this like you could get one of these anywhere. I don't know. I don't like. I'm some weird digital man on the internet.
No, I mean
that is funny.
Yeah. Well, so with VR, though, I mean, I'm going to ask, because I know you have made VR games, and it's very rare we have like any sort of VR creator or developer on.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of, we've had such a roller coaster ride of, people are excited about it, and then, oh, VR's dead. Then people are excited about it, and then VR's dead. And, just recently we kind of went through the little bit of a lump again. What do you think are some of the hurdles that VR still needs to kind of overcome to become as mainstream as sometimes people think it will be?
So we just talked about Meta and their layoffs and stuff. They had a huge portfolio of VR companies, right? Like they bought a lot of VR companies. So when they have to sort of step back from their grand vision of what they were trying to create with it, it hurts everybody. It's like it hurts the whole field. So as a VR creator myself, I think what's frustrating about it is it's like pretty obvious how the bottlenecks are. Like, let's say this is what it's like with VR right now. Let's say you had an iPhone, right? But you only have like a 2008 iPhone. Like you don't have like the modern stuff. And like if you have like an iPad or you have like just like a laptop or something, like you can have access to all those other experiences. Where it is now, I feel like most people are seeing things through the lens of Oculus Quest. And the Quest is amazing, partially because it's so accessible, but the same thing that makes the Quest amazing is the same thing that's kind of frustrating about the Quest. Like I have a Quest, I've put some stuff through in there before, like I've done a little bit of development on it. It's and it's really cool, but like the it's limited by what Meta has created for people to like watch through it.
Right. Yeah.
So like if you have made something on Quest and you've been lucky enough to get it all the way through to like the front page of their app store, then first off, you're ballin'. Like there's not a lot of transparency. There's not a lot of titles or like ways to find things unless you look stuff up. Recently there was a headline about how much money Gorilla Tag made. Gorilla Tag's not even in the proper app store. If you play Gorilla Tag on Quest, it's through Oculus App Lab or Meta App Lab, whatever they call it. And like that's like sort of like the understudy apps that are like available but are not like placed in their store. Like you have to know to look it up. And Gorilla Tag still makes a ton of money with in-app purchases, and it's pretty fun. It's an interesting concept of a game, but like understanding how much the business of VR is impacting VR, if you know that and you see what it is, like it's a little bit frustrating because I've had amazing VR experiences and I've seen like what VR can be, And like those titles, like the things that are like the coolest stuff you can do in VR, it's like it probably got press when it came out, and like people aren't talking about it as much anymore. So that's sort of a tricky situation, right? Because like what's most limiting isn't actually the tech; it's the display of the tech. So that's sort of my take. Is like a lot of stuff happened on a corporate level that has impacted a lot of the way people view these things. If you play PC VR games, like you're gonna have amazing experiences. Like if you pick up Blade and Sorcery, if you pick up some other ones. A game I love is from 2018 called Jet Island. That game's a freaking incredible experience. It's like nobody's talking about that game anymore. It's still one of the like most amazing gaming experiences I've ever had. And like there's really cool stuff. Some of it's like I don't even like the Boneworks Bone Lab stuff that much, but like it's so cool. Like it's a really incredible product. If you're familiar with any of these games, like they're all worth checking out. And like that's, as a VR creator, like in 1 week, like I don't want to overplug myself here, but if you go watch that video, it's like a video about me making my first VR game in 1 week. In a week, in Unreal, I built a roguelike game that has a grappling hook and has like a combat mechanic and like procedural enemy spawning, and like you progress through like a unique climbing mechanic. And it's like in just a week of like playing around with this, I was like, wow, like there's like an enormous amounts of untapped potential, and it's really frustrating to not see VR like live up to its full potential. But part of it's like,
but not by fault of its own, but just by the politics of business around it.
If I built that game into a proper game experience, and I'm sure I could, like, and I had like the most amazing VR game, like it wouldn't like go anywhere. Like it would go to like the bottom of Steam for Steam stuff, unless I got in bed with a publisher. And if I tried to get it on like I keep trying to say Oculus, if I got it on the on Meta's store, like good luck. I'm probably not gonna get it there. And a ton of it is limited by visibility. Like you're not seeing the best of VR right now.
Yeah. You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. I feel like that is a good point, that the accessibility it maybe should feel more like the App Store on social media apps, or have way easier download rates, because it's kind of feels a little bit more like the Amazon store, where it's whoever's the one with the most money they put on the top shelf or on the front page, and it kind of sucks, but they're the ones who control where things get shelved. And to be honest, I've said this before, but I really do feel like the Gorilla Tag, okay, how much money did they start with? $0. VR chat, $0. I don't think there's been many games like Beat Saber, $0. No good games have started with a huge budget, at the least that I'm aware of, except Half-Life Alyx, but we won't even get into that. But most good things that are developed are through artists just having a passion project. And instead, they think just throwing money at things is going to somehow make a good title, or, or throwing it at these studios, and they're just forced to make something without an idea. And so it just, it comes out like crap. I just still think the funniest example I can still give is just when they put Oakley's in the metaverse. It's like, why would I wear a regular pair of sunglasses? You know what I mean? I can wear anything I want, and I'm going to have Oakley's. Dude, give me like some laser LED glasses, you know what I mean? With holograms on them. Why am I just going to, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we are also coming up on the 2-hour mark. So, I mean, I just want to kind of give...
go?
For 4 hours. No, I'm just kidding. We're actually pretty much, we usually try and make it about an hour and a half.
We're
Roganing it. We're going full Rogan.
But I do want to, before we end here, I do want to just give you, Woody, the last little bit of the floor. Is there anything you want to maybe Tell us about any projects that are coming up that, or, we should follow you or be aware of, or is there any pages in particular you'd like any of the listeners to go check out and follow?
Yeah, for sure. You can find me right here on YouTube. I guess this is also a podcast. So you can find me on YouTube at WoodyDevs. Just search WoodyDevs, and you can see some of the game projects that I've been talking about during this episode of XR Motion. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/WoodyDevs. And that's a great place to find me. Sometimes I'm making games live there. Sometimes I'm interviewing people. I had Mike on just recently, and I make them play funny games from my Unreal Engine setup.
That game was whack.
The big thing I want to plug is actually right before we went live and recorded this podcast, I just announced on Twitter the lineup for Tabletop Tuesdays, which is a series of streams I'm doing where you can play an RPG in my interactive RPG simulator on Twitch. And it's going to be game mastered by a bunch of my friends who are also VTuber virtual avatar creators. If that sounds interesting to you, it's like playing a game like Pathfinder or D&D, but like massively, like kind of like RuneScape, but there is a game master. So it's really fun. It's built on an RPG that I wrote specifically for stream. There's a bunch of different like kinds of characters you can play as and a bunch of different classes. And it's like an ongoing development project of mine. So like every time we play, we're going to be experimenting with new features and stuff. And the people I've brought in are really cool because like a lot of them are fantasy creators. Like a friend of mine, Barry the Bugbear, is going to do an episode in March, and he is a bugbear VTuber. If you want to just jump in and see some of the wild stuff of like live motion capture and interactive stuff on Twitch, it's pretty fun.
That sounds amazing. Well, thank you for joining. And really quick, before we say goodbye, I just want to say, guys, if you guys want merch, we do have merch available on our website, XR Motion hats, shirts, hoodies.
I should have had my hat, man.
Oh man, we do have that available. We just had our first purchase from Will Clark. That was amazing. Thank you for getting that. And then and then as well, we have an amazing Discord family here where we're always on and answering questions and talking about what we think is coming down the line in the future of digital design. So, but anyway, with that being said, Woody, thank you so much for being on, man.
Yeah,
this
appreciate your
was
time.
A blast.
Thanks, guys. It was a ton of fun. I know how editing works, and I know what an absolute like weird alphabet soup I just handed you. So, best of luck.
No, it was great, man. If anything, I feel like we could do this for hours. That's what we're learning.
And that's sort of the problem, isn't it? Oh man.